Hayworth. How many people got a chance to watch the debates this weekend? And what did you think? Pardon me? He won.
Fellow citizens, you're wonderful to take time to be here this evening, and I would ask that you forgive this bit of campaign trail crud on my vocal cords. I've been out working pretty hard and visiting with so many people across the state, and it is wonderful to be back here in Flagstaff, recalling another historic campaign, when people joined together in much the same way you have assembled as awakened Americans, and we made a big difference back in 1994. And people have asked me about this particular year, running again for public office. What is it like? And I just have to simply say, based on the excitement, the involvement of so many of you, I believe that this year of 2010 can be akin to 1994 to the 1,000th power, exponentially greater, because we now know the stakes are exponentially higher. It was great to be preceded here by Karen and by Roger. And Karen, was that your voice I heard on those recordings for the Tea Party? The power of broadcasting. They did a wonderful job in those ads. And it reminded me today, well, first of all, we were coming back in from Page, and to have a new FM talk station up here was great. And then Mitch and Joe very generously had me on this afternoon. And I know some folks heard it. Some of you remarked to me that you heard it, and that may be one of the reasons you're here tonight. It's good to see so many people of so many different ages here this evening. He may not be the youngest, but the first gentleman I met here tonight is Jacob back there, who's all of 7. And Jacob is with his granddad and his dad, and they made the trip up. Jacob, thank you for saying hello to me tonight and for opening the door. And I see some other youngsters. In fact, if you are elementary school students, would you guys please stand, the youngest among us here tonight, the younger Americans who are here. We've got Jalen, we've got some other kids. Great. Thank you so much for taking time to be here. Fellow citizens, if you'll admit to having heard me on the stump, you know, I attribute it perhaps to my days in broadcasting, but also to having run for public office before. It's always good to do some audience analysis, so it's good to see the younger folks here. But as you may know, if you've heard me speak before, especially in this campaign, I very much want to take time to call on 2 special groups, and let me do it as follows. If you have worn the uniform of our armed forces, either in wartime or in peacetime, if you are one of our veterans, would you please stand and be recognized here tonight? Veterans, thank you for your service, and what makes it even more impressive is that I know we have in our company tonight those who are veterans of World War II. I was visiting with Bill earlier, and I know there are other, in fact, the World War II vets, would you please stand and be recognized, especially the greatest. Look at this! Look at our World War II vets. Thank you again. Of course, many years ago, Tom Brokaw wrote the book, The Greatest Generation. It's not because Tom Brokaw wrote it, but I would take exception to this degree. I believe those members of the World War II generation would readily admit, and this is the great thing about our nation, there is greatness in every generation of Americans. But you, at a crucial hour, demonstrated uncommon courage. We thank you for it, and we reverence your service. Speaking of greatness in every generation, if you have a loved one currently serving in our nation's military, either stateside or in some far-flung posting around the world, or yes, even in a combat zone, or if you have a loved one who has just recently completed a tour of duty, is a newly minted veteran, would you please stand and be recognized by our assembly here this evening? Thank you again.
How about the one that's just a new cadet?
A brand new cadet in one of the service academies? Well, that's wonderful. Yes, ma'am, you have every reason to be proud. Thank you for offering that. And one of the greatest honors I had as your member of Congress for 6 years and as a member of the United States House for 12 years was setting up that process, and politics were not involved. Thank you, Joy. I appreciate that. You bring joy as well as water. And Gay will affirm that right there, right, pal? Good to see you too, Gay. And again, forgive me, it must sound like sandpaper, but it doesn't hurt, it's just from overuse. But one of the greatest honors I would have, we took politics completely out of it, had a special nonpartisan committee, and youngsters from around the congressional district would go through the application process and the testing and the evaluations. And it would be an incredible thrill to pick up the telephone and call a young man or young woman and say to them, congratulations, you've received an appointment to one of our military academies. And to talk to them and to talk to their parents and at times grandparents, because we tried to let the family know we were going to be making a call. And that again just typifies the truth of the American experience, that there is greatness in every generation. And along those lines, certainly we would be remiss if we did not stop to recognize the service of the gentleman whom I'm challenging in this primary. We talk about service academies. Obviously, my opponent followed his grandfather and father into the Naval Academy at Annapolis, and indeed another generation of McCains. One of his sons has likewise attended Annapolis, and I believe is now undergoing flight training in the Navy, if I'm not mistaken. And still another son has served in the Marine Corps in Iraq. And obviously, when it comes to the service of our senior senator, none of us, I believe, in any way can do anything but admire and recognize both his service and his very real sacrifice. And in fact, it is because of that service, not only from the McCain family and Senator McCain, but so many families in this room, both who have gone before in the service and a new generation willing to stand in the breach. For those people willing to stand and fight for our freedom, we've seen a preservation of our constitutional republic. And when we have disagreements concerning public policy, that is why we have the political process. And so once again, we engage to determine who will best represent us in the United States Senate. And tonight I just have to offer a couple of thoughts. Please forgive the personal indulgence, but I have to tell you, if you ever want to receive a good bit of attention, just challenge the presidential nominee of your party 2 years following his national candidacy. It has been incredible to see the numbers of people who have come to cover this campaign. Case in point, a couple of months ago, I was in the tiny town of Tonopah. Forgive